Okay, lads, so I'll give another go at the suspense count video. We're going to have a look at the 2018 one because I'm going to try and get as many of those more recent questions and get videos of them up over between now and say Easter. So just for your own information, I started doing this about half an hour ago, made a balls of it, so I have to start again. So you can see where you can make some simple mistakes doing these. Anyway, what I've done is I've laid out the journal. I've got my T accounts page ready. I'm going to do those parts first, and then we'll show you how to transfer from the journal over into the other three areas, which I know some of you have not struggled with, but have a few questions on. So first thing is find out what this guy is. Fahy. He's a garage owner, which means his business is buying and selling cars, right? So that's going to be important probably at some stage, right? Once we know that, we can ignore all this stuff for the time being. We get into these questions, which are sort of independent little questions, and we'll treat each one of them separately. So first one, number one, a car lift purchased on credit for 4,000 had been entered on the incorrect side of the creditor's account. The only other entry made was a debit of 400 on the purchaser's account. So remember, we go through our steps. Step one is do what they did. So what have they done? They've put 4,000 on the incorrect side of the creditor's account. Now it's handy, it's obviously important to know that when you buy something on credit, you credit creditors. So if they've put it on the incorrect side, they've put it on the debit side. So they put 4,000 there. And then the other entry they made was to put 400 on the debit of purchases. So in our purchases account, they've put 400 here. So that's their two-step ones now. For the sake of this, again, I can't circle things, so I can't find my bloody digital pen. But anyway, for the sake of these, what we've got to do is I'm going to, anything that they do, I'm going to leave not bolded, and anything that we do, so any corrections we make, I will bold it. So I'll make it like that. Okay, so we have to undo what they've done as our step two. So 4,000 there, and step two, 4,000 here. So that's undoing everything they've done. So our accounts are back to zero. And then we have to do what they should have done. So what did they do? So they bought a car lift, which is equipment, on credit. It's not purchases because it's not for resale, you'd have to assume. So equipment is an asset. So increases in assets go on the debit side. So it's debit the asset of 4,000. Step three, and credit how you bought it. Put 4,000 there as step three. Okay. So the rules for buying stuff, it's debit what you bought, credit how you bought it. So we bought equipment and we credit how we bought it, which was on credit. Okay. So that's it done. So we'll journalize that. So we'll look at our creditor's account first. We've got 8,000 on the credit of creditor's account bolded. Don't mind this 4,000. That's what they did. We're only correcting the stuff, so we're only putting in the stuff that we've done. So it's 8,000 on the credit of creditors. Second one then, we've put 4,000 on the, sorry, it's 400 on the credit of purchases. And then we have 4,000 on the debit of equipment. So if we look at that, that's all of our numbers in. At the moment, we've 8,400 there and we've 4,000 there. So they don't balance, which means we have a suspense of, what's that, 4,400. So now both sides add up to 8,800. At that point here, I'll come back to the part B and C later on. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense, that first one. Second one then. Fahy's private car. So private always suggests capital or drawings. If it's going into the business, If it's capital, if it's coming out of the business, it's drawings. So D. Fahy's private car valued at 10,000 was presented to the business for resale. No entry was made in relation to this. So it's car, he's a garage, he's going to sell it on. So it's not going to be vehicles, it's going to be purchases. He hasn't bought the car. So how has he gotten the car? He hasn't got it by bank. He hasn't got it on credit. He's gotten the car one simple way. He's been given the car himself. So that's capital. So our two T accounts, and nothing has been done in relation to that. Our two T accounts then are going to be debit what we bought. So that's purchases because it's car for resale. That's our step 3. And credit how we bought it. Well, he got it by giving it to the business. So our account is capital, and that's going to be 10,000. That's our step 3. Now I will put that in straight away, okay? Because these are two separate. The second part of this is the second entry. So in my journal, I'm going to have debit purchases of 10,000 and credit capital of 10,000. Okay, and then I can move on to my my second part. So the car was later sold on credit to a debtor of the business for 10,000. This had been treated as a cash sale. So it wasn't a cash sale, it was a credit sale. Okay, so we'll have a look at that. So he sold the car, so we know that that's a sales account. What has he done? Well, he's treated it as a cash sale. So a cash sale is a cash or bank, whichever you want to use. Really doesn't matter. I would say it's a bank. It's a large number. They would have put it in. So what they have done is they have put 10,000 there and 10,000 there. If you wish, right there again, they're your step ones. That's what they've done. Sorry. Okay. If you want, look, that is correct, right? So you don't have to undo it to redo it if you don't want to. So you can if you want. So you can undo everything, which would be step 2. Undo that. And step 2 here would be 10,000 euros. And we don't do that. That gets you back to 0. Now you could leave this out here because you're just going to have to redo it in a second because that obviously was correct. So anyway, step 3 would be do what you should have done. So we sold it. So the rules are step 3, credit what you sold. Credit what you sell, which is 10,000. Credit what you sell. Debit how you sold it. So you sold it on credit. So if you sell it on credit, it's debtors. You sell to debtors. So that would be 10,000 on the debtors. Or so 3 there, 10,000 on the debtors, right? So credit what you sold, debit how you sold it. All right. So we journalize that now. If we look at this account, the sales is obviously going to balance out. We know that because what they actually did was correct. So 10,000 on the left, 10,000 on the right is actually correct. So that's not going to go in. The bank, we're going to put in this 10,000 on the right. And then we have to put in 10,000 on the debit of debtors. Again, only the things that we're doing. So now 20,000 on the left, 20,000 on the right. So that balances out. Now I'm not going to put in the legends for a minute. I'll come back to them at the end. Let me just show you a quick way of doing those legends. Okay, number 3 is this one comes up every single year. It's come up in every suspense question that's ever been asked. So Fahy returned a motor car purchased on credit from supplier for 12,000 and entered this in the relevant ledger account incorrectly as 1,200. However, a credit note arrived from a supplier showing a restocking charge of 200. The only entry made in this was a credit entry of 11.8 in the creditor's account. It's actually, it seems quite long, but it's very, very straightforward. So I come down here. Fahy returned a motor car purchased on credit. So what's that? That's purchases, returns. Okay, and he's done it on credit. So the second account is creditors. So he entered it in the relevant ledger accounts incorrectly as 1,200. So purchases, returns is, he has put it there as 1,200 and there as 1,200. So creditors has gone down. That's how I know it's on the debit side. And you can just put it on the opposite side of purchases, returns. Again, if you're stuck, you don't know whether purchases, returns is debit or credit, you can always go back to question 1 and you'll see that purchases is debit. So purchases is debit, purchases, returns is credit. So that's what they did, right? So step one, right? So undo those by putting the 1,200 there and bolding it, and that gets you back to 0. Now, I'm going to go down to the end. I'm going to skip all this stuff here. And I'm going to go down to this, and I'm going to see the only entry made in respect of this credit note was a credit entry of 11.8 in the creditor's account. That's a step 1. They've put in 11.8 there. And we're going to undo that by putting 11.8 there. Okay, and that gets your account back to 0 completely. Then we have to try and work out, so that's everything they've done. We have to try and work out the proper double entry. So there's a credit note for 1,200, there's a restocking charge of 200, which in reality brings the credit note down to 11,800. So what should have happened? So what they should have done, I'm just going to skip a line so it's a little bit clearer. Well, creditors should have gone down by 11,800. That's our step 3, which means purchases, returns is also 11,800. So debit there, credit there, double entry and all that. For every debit there's a credit. Okay, and that's our that's that working done. So we did what they did for step 1 and undid it for both things that they've done, the 1,200 and the original 11,800. Okay, getting our accounts back to 0. So as far as there and as far as there, that's getting our accounts back to 0 actually. So I've skipped the line just to show, like that's getting you back to 0 and all of this is getting you back to 0. You'll see the same numbers on both sides. So we've undone everything they've done, and then we've done what they should have done, which was put in that credit note of 11,800. Now, pretty straightforward way of doing it. Once you undo that 11,800, you just put in another 11,800 straight away underneath it, because it's always that same process. So when we come to journalize it then, we have on our purchases returns 11,800 on the right, and we've got 1,200 on the left. So that's 10,600 for purchases returns. And we have for our second account, which would be creditors, we should have 1,200 on the right. We've got 11.8 and 11.8 on the left. So 23.6 minus the 1,200 is 22.4. So the suspense then will always be the same number, 11.8, as the step 3, the right hand side. So the suspense is 11,800, and now both sides add up to 22,400. And again, I'll come back and do the being thing in a bit. Okay. Number 4, payment of 500 was received from F. McFadden, a debtor, whose debt had been written off and who wishes to trade with D. Fahy again. This represents 80% of the original debt, and the debtor is undertaken to pay the remaining debt by January 2018. No entries have been made in the books. You've seen this loads of times, lads. You've seen it in question ones, and you've seen it in tabular statements. You've seen it everywhere. So it's how do we deal with it? What's happening to debtors? What's happening to bad debts recovered, and what's happening to your bank? So we deal with it bit by bit. Nothing is actually, they've put nothing in the account, so we go straight to step 3 here, right? So a payment was received, payment of 500. So into the cash or the bank, we can assume now it's all going into the bank. If you go with cash in these, it's no great problem. But a payment of 500 was received, so our bank goes up by 500 euros. That's the first thing. On behalf of a debtor, so we know debtors is going to change. Whose debt had been previously written off. So we've got money from a write-off in debt. So we've got a bad debt recovered. So the full amount of the debt is going to be recovered. So that's our bad debt recovered. So 500 euros represents 80% of the original debt. So if we divide that by 80 and multiply by 100, we get the original debt, which is 625. So he's given us 500. We're going to get back 625 in total, which means we have to put debtors back up by 125 euros. They're all step 3s. So we've gotten 500. We're going to get 625, bad debt recovered, which means we're still owed 125, or we will get paid 125 in January. And that's it. Okay. So those 3 things can go straight in. So just think about what's happened to your bank. Your bank goes up, your debtors as an asset is going back up, and bad debt recovered, which is an earning or profit. So that's going to go up as well. Your profit will go up as well. So profits are credits. So just journalize that. So we've bank 500, debtors 125, and bad debt recovered of 625. So all right, so the last one then. Fahy purchased goods on credit from Car Parts Limited for 3,000 plus VAT at 13.5%. The only entry made in the accounts for the VAT inclusive figure was entered on the debit side of equipment, and the VAT exclusive figure entered on the credit side of the parts account. Okay, so this is one now, I've never seen this before, so we just have to sort of work through what they've done and what they should have done, understanding that VAT should never be included. VAT always has to be included separately. So we purchased goods on credit, that's fine. So the only entry made in the accounts for the VAT inclusive figure was entered on the debit side of equipment. So the VAT inclusive figure is VAT, the number plus VAT. So they've put on the debit side of equipment, right? So they've put in 3,000, and VAT is 13.5%. So they've if you add 13.5% to that, you get 3,405. So they've put that in equipment, and they've put in the and the VAT exclusive figure, which is 3,000, on the credit side of Car Parts Limited account. So Car Parts Limited is a creditor. We buy goods from creditors. You could call it Car Parts Limited if you want, but I'd suggest calling it creditors. They have put 3,000 on the debit side there. Now, first thing I'm going to do, without going any further, is I'm going to undo those. Just get myself back to 0 because I'll try and work out what I should be doing. Okay, so 3,405. Debit there, step 2. and 3,000 here, step 2. So that's getting you back to 0. Okay, so have a look at what they should have done. He purchased goods on credit, which means he's buying goods for resale. So it should have been purchases. Now, step 3 is do what he should have done. So for purchases, you never include VAT in purchases. So the 3,000 is always VAT exclusive. The VAT itself has to go on the debit side. We owe, what will it be, 3,000 by 13.5%, which is 405. That's a step 3. And then you owe the full amount, the 3,405. You owe that to your creditors. So in your creditors account, you owe 3,405. I'm going to put that in the creditors account I already have. You don't have to if you don't want to. But you see here, we've 3,000 on the left, we've 405 on the left, so 3,405, and then we have to have 3,405 on the right of creditors. VAT can't be included in purchases, but it has to be included in creditors. You have to pay them the VAT inclusive amount. You can't not pay them the amount you owe them just because some of it's VAT. The reason VAT doesn't get included in purchases is because it's an ASTER liability, which you can claim back or have to pay to the government. So then when we journalize that, we've so for creditors, we've got 3,000 on the left, 3,405 on the right. So that's 405 on the credit of creditors. We have got, where's all this? We have purchases 3,000 on the left, and we VAT 405 on the left. VAT 405, which means we should have, sorry, I missed an account, didn't I? Equipment, 3,405, I think, is it? Yeah, sorry, equipment, we've 3,405 on the right. So that gives us 3,405 on the left and 3,810 on the right, which means there's a suspense of 405 on the left. All right, and that's that done. Okay, so again, it's just following a process and actually thinking about what's happening is all you have to do. It's quite difficult to actually study for it. Just have to continually do the questions and get into a rhythm for it, and understand that you will make mistakes as you go with them. Anyway, from there, we're done with our T accounts now, and our next job is to actually do the suspense account and the suspense account, the adjusted profit and loss account, and the adjusted balance sheet, B, C, and D together. So we have rules here, right? The rules are if something is profit and loss, so purchases will go in the profit and loss. Basically, if something isn't in your balance sheet up here, it's profit and loss. So purchases is profit and loss. Purchases returns is profit and loss. Bad debt recovered, profit and loss. Purchases, profit and loss. Those there. If they're in the profit and loss account or not in the balance sheet, if they're a debit and they're in the debit column, so purchases, well, purchases here is in the debit column. If it's a debit, we take it away. If it's a credit, like this purchases here is a credit, we add it on. Okay, so that's going to be our process. Just get this on the right hand side to make this easier to do. Okay, so if it's in the balance sheet, so I'll just do all my trading profit and loss accounts first. So I've got our purchases here. This one purchases. This one here purchases returns as a credit. So again, go to our rules. We're going to add on credits from the profit and loss account. Come down here. Bad debt recovered is a credit. So that's a plus. Again, ignoring the fact that they're bad debt recovered or bad debts or purchases or sales or anything else, what we really care about is it a credit or is it a debit? Credits we add on. Purchases here is a debit, so we'll take that away. And that is them all. Okay. Now, so just before we go any further with that, I should have really done the suspense account. So I'll do it now. So the suspense account, so all we do for that is we take our suspense numbers. If they're on the debit, we keep them on the debit. If they're on the credit, we keep them on the credit, and we make a T account of those. So just have to go all the way down here. So we have from working one, we have the purchases and the creditors 4,400. Okay. Um, that was on the debit side. And basically, what you're using for your words is where the mistakes are. So there's a mistake in the purchases account, and they've left out something out of the creditors account. So that's how we know where the mistakes are. In working two, there's no suspense mentioned. In working three, there's 11,800 on the credit, so we put that on the credit of the suspense account. And again, that is what would that be? Creditors and purchases returns. And then in working four, there's no suspense. Working five, there's a suspense of 405. And that is from creditors and equipment. That's where the mistakes are there. Okay. So all we have to do then is find out what the original difference is. So to do that, you just balance it. So the right-hand side adds up to 11,800. The left-hand side is 4,805. So we have to take our 11,800, take away our 4,805. That gives you your original difference of 6,995. And now both sides add up to 11,800. So again, all we're doing is taking our numbers from our journal and slotting them in. Okay. So the second part then, I hope we're all happy enough with that. You can go back and look at that. That should be pretty easy. The second part is my statement of corrected net profit. I'm going to do it in the journal here just to. I wonder can I? It shows I can't. All right. So this is part. Part three. So our statement of corrected net profit. Now all you do there, you take your original net profit figure, which is 40,000. And what we're going to do is add on any of the credits, take away any of the debits of the things that would be in net profit. So I've already labeled them. So I'm going to have to add on this purchases of 400 because it's a credit, this purchases of 10.6 because it's a credit, and this bad debt recovered of 625 because it's a credit. So we've got purchases for number one, and that is 400. We've got our purchases returns from number 3, I think it was. Yeah, this third one here, purchases returns 10.6 to add on. And then we have our bad debt recovered. That one was from, sorry, bad debt recovered was from number 4. And that was 600 and something, I think, 625. So add those together. That's 51, 625. Then we have to take away any of the credits, or sorry, any of the debits. So from number 1, there's no debits. From number 2, we've got a purchase as a 10,000. From number 3, there's no debit. From number 4, there's no debit. And from number 5, there's a debit of 3,000 to take away. So, what was number 2? And purchases. Number 5 was 3,000. So we're going to take away 13,000. And that gives us our corrected net profit of 38,625. Okay, so quick recap again of what we said there. Add on credits, take away debits. Now, we go to our balance sheet. Okay, and we're going to have to adjust all those. The rules for balance sheets for assets, so for fixed assets and current assets, we add debits and take credits. Okay, fixed assets, current assets, add debits, take away credits. So for all assets, it's add debits, take credits. Okay, so I'm going to do those first, just keep with those assets rules. So look for premises, vehicles, or equipment. So first one we've got here is equipment, and we've got a debit of 4,000 for equipment. That means it's a plus. We add debits. Second one here, we've current assets, we've got debtors, and we've got debtors here. So that is a plus. Okay, it's a debit. We debit pluses. Third one, we've got bank's current liability. We've got debtors here. Again, that's a plus because it's a debit. It doesn't matter. It does matter that it's debtors, but if it's a debit, so we debit assets, we add them on. And fourth one here, creditors is liability, VAT is liability, equipment. Now equipment is an asset up here, and we've got a credit to the asset, so that's a minus. So we take away credits as we go. Okay, so I'm going to slot them in. I'm going to do all my fixed assets and my current assets just to start off with, and then we move on to our current liabilities rules. So now I'm just going to make this a little bit smaller if I can, so you can see them. All right, so we take our starting figure here for premises. I'm going to go through our assets. Our premises starts off at 500,000. There was no adjustment to premises, so it remains at 500,000. Motor vehicles. There was no change to motor vehicles, I don't think. There wasn't, no, 35,000. Equipment, there definitely was change to. We've got equipment there. We've got equipment down here. So there's two changes to equipment. So equipment started as 24,000. And if I'm right, we had a plus 4,000 from working 1. And down here in the last working, we've minus 3,405 from the last one. So that'll get us to 20, what'll that be? 24,000 plus 4 minus 3,405 is 24,595. Okay, my current assets, stock can't ever really change. So if you're changing stock, you're wrong. Debtors has changed. Debtors started off as 10,000, and I think we had to change debtors somewhere. Yeah, we have a debit of 125, so we've a plus 125 there to debtors. That's my only change. So that's 29.2. So that is. Sorry, debtors was 10,000. So there's a debtors there of 10,000 as well. So just 2,000, two 10,000s. So and debtors there. So debtors start as 10.8. God, sorry. So that adds up to 20,800, 20,925. Okay, so debit to debtors, two of them get added on. And then cash. So cash, there was no change to cash. So cash stayed at 12,200. Now, I'm not sure. Some of the ones that were mentioned as cash payments or whatever, they might change cash. Or they might change bank in the marking scheme. You won't lose marks either way. So we'll just go with those as they are. But if you see it's slightly different than marking scheme, don't panic. Cash and bank are really the same thing when it comes to this sort of stuff. So our current liabilities rules and our finance buys rules, ignoring our drawings. Okay, just drawings is slightly different, but current liabilities and finance buy is the opposite. Credits we add on, debits we take away. So we've got our creditors. We have a credit creditor, so that's an add-on. Capital is a credit, so we add that on. Bank is a liability and it's a credit, so we add that on. Creditors is a debit. Debits we take away. Bank is a debit, so we're taking that away. Creditors is a credit, so we're adding that on. VAT is a debit, we're taking that away. And that's them all. So again, for creditors and finance buy, if it's credit, you add it on. If it's a debit, you take it away. So we'll start with our creditors. Creditor starts off as 52.3. We have from our first one, we've a credit of 8,000 to add on. We've got a 22.4 to take away. And we have a 405 to add on. Now, you also have the original difference is included here. So what we do then, we go down to our suspense account, and the rules are the opposite for this now. I'll come back to that at the end. But so in our original suspense account, we have a 6695 as a debit. Treat that, if it's a debit here, it's a credit in its own account. So in effect, this 6995 is a credit, so it gets added on to our creditors. So it is plus 6905 now. I'm quite conscious that this is going to disappear off your screen now in a second. So what I might do is, it's right there. So I'll just put my answer there for creditors here. So 52.3 plus the 8,000 minus 22.4 plus 405 plus 6905. So that is 45,210. Uh, sorry, 6995, isn't it? Yeah, for the original difference. Okay. If uh, your bank started off as 18.4, you've got to, let's have a look and see what's in the bank. We've got in working one, nothing. Working two, there's a credit of 10,000, so we're going to add on 10,000. We have a 500 debit to take away, and that's all for the bank. So plus 10,000 minus 500 is 27.9. And then our VAT, there's definitely some changes to VAT. VAT started off at 7,500. And down at the last one, I think, wasn't it? There's a debit VAT of 405 to take away. Just check that there's no other VATs. There isn't. Okay. And you could be ticking those off as you go. Everyone has to go in somewhere. So once you've put them in, just maybe put a little tick beside them that they're done with, so you don't have to keep going back and checking like I have to keep doing. So that is 70. Would that be 7095? Okay. So capital is our last one. 550. I think there is a capital of one of them. Yeah, there's a credit of 10,000, so we're adding on credits, remember, for liabilities and our finance buy. So add on that 10,000, you can tick that off. There is no other mention of capital. So that brings up to 560. Net profit. So your net profit is your correct net profit. So 38625. So that's your answer from part 38625. That's your answer from down here. Sorry, from part three of the question. That goes in, and your drawings then. Drawings didn't change, so it's 25,700 remains the same. Now, most of the time, drawings does change, and if drawings does change, you follow the exact same rules as assets. You add debits and take credits because drawings is a minus liability. So follow the same rules as your assets for drawings. Okay, so that's it finished. It should uh, it should balance. I hope it does anyway. You can't really not get them to balance because a bit like the incomplete records, everything always balances. So as long as you're transferring things correctly, they should balance. So anyway, we take our assets, take away our liabilities, and then add on your answer. 572,925, and then remember your drawings are minus, so 572,925 is your answer. So just the only one really to be careful when you're transferring over is you remember to put in your original difference. And your original difference, I'll just go back to that suspense account. If your original difference is a debit, you treat it as a credit when you're transferring it over. If your original difference is on the credit side, you treat it as a debit when it's transferring over. So it's the opposite rules for that. I hope that was a little bit more useful than the last one. I was very conscious I made a balls at the last one. Anyway, just to show you the theory then part, they'll always ask a theory, so they'll ask you about variances, about errors of omission, errors of commission, the different types of errors. I will put up, they're in the notes actually, but I'll make sure they go up again. And they might ask you what the purpose of a suspense account is. So a suspense account is there to make sure that you can produce a final set of accounts. So a suspense account is used if there's a mistake in the accounts that stops the trial balance from balancing, and therefore you can't produce a final set of accounts that match. And all you do is you take the difference between the debit and the credit side and you incorporate that into one of the accounts. So it's entered in the suspense account. So the difference between the debit and the credit side, when a trial balance doesn't balance, gets entered into the suspense account, and it's used to allow the accounts to balance so that final accounts can be made. Um, so the relevant accounts are then sort of corrected once you find your mistakes, and a more accurate balance sheet is produced. So that's that for today. Uh, and I said, hopefully, then that will be of some use. But have a look at that suspense account. And I will produce a few more of these for you as we go. All right, lads, we'll see you. I intend being in tomorrow, so we'll see you then.